Real betrayal. A story of betrayal. Forgiving betrayal. A betrayed wife. An unfaithful husband. These words seem to echo like a muffled cry inside the chest of anyone who has experienced a marital drama. This is one of those moving, controversial, and extremely real stories that make us question the limits of forgiveness. A shocking narrative that revolves around a marriage in crisis, an extramarital affair that was hidden for a long time, and a strong woman named Hope, who decided to act in a way that no one expected. Hope is the kind of woman that many dream of being, and many others silently envy. Hard-working, sensitive, generous, and always with a ready smile, even when life insisted on not smiling back. To outsiders, she had what many would call the perfect life. A handsome, charismatic, intelligent, and apparently faithful husband. Friends said they were the ideal couple. But like so many stories we hear out there, what is behind closed doors is almost always very different from what you see on your social media feed. She met Andre while she was still in college. He was the kind of guy who knew how to charm, intelligent, funny, the center of attention. Hope was more reserved, the kind of person who observes before acting. But it was precisely this quiet, mature way that caught Andre's attention. They fell in love quickly, intensely, and in less than 3 years they were married. And for a long time, everything was really beautiful. Plans, trips, achievements, a life together that seemed like something out of a movie. But everything began to change. Silently, like the tide receding before a storm. Hope began to notice little things. Andre, who was previously attentive, started to forget dates. He arrived, later, more tired, more distant. Messages became scarcer, hugs rarer, and what hurt the most, his gaze no longer looked at her with the same tenderness as before. At first, she blamed work. Andre had been promoted and had a lot of responsibilities. That was it. It had to be. But inside her, something said no. That there was something wrong. Something else. It was on a Thursday night, returning from a tiring meeting, that Hope saw the first strange message on her husband's cell phone. The device vibrated on the living room table, and the screen flashed with an unknown name. Mel. The notification showed only a part of the message. It was amazing yesterday. Hope froze. That could be it. Or it could be exactly what. It seemed. She didn't confront him. Not that day. She just put her phone back and kept quiet. That same night, she slept facing the other way, feeling the weight of something that didn't yet have a name, but already hurt like a betrayal. In the following days, she observed more. Andre was dressing up more. He even wore perfume to go to the supermarket. He secretly checked his cell phone, and once again, Hope found messages, photos, evidence. It wasn't just a suspicion, it was a fact. Andre was cheating on her with another woman, and he had been doing it for months. But what you may never understand, and what took Hope herself far too long to accept, is that she didn't scream. She didn't fight. She didn't throw it all away. She just kept it to herself. Yes, she discovered the betrayal and decided to forgive. But she didn't tell him that she knew. That night, instead of crying, she took a deep breath, washed her face, and prepared dinner as if nothing had happened. And that was how it was for the next few days. She lived with the truth in her eyes and a deafening silence in her chest, because the love she felt was still greater than the pain. Or maybe it was fear. Fear of losing, fear of facing it, Fear that there would be no going back. This story will involve you, revolt you, make you question how far love goes and where self-abandonment begins. Hope decided to continue living with the man who betrayed her. And more than that, she organized a party. Yes, a party for the two of them. But the reason, the meaning, and the outcome of this story is something you will only understand at the end. Now tell me, if you were in Hope's place, what would you do? Would you forgive? Would you confront? Or would you remain silent like her comment below? Your opinion is very important. And if this story has already touched you in some way, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the rest of this real, intense, and twist-filled testimony. You'll want to know where this story ends.
Hello, my name is Hope. I remember exactly the feeling. It was as if something inside me had broken, but without making a sound, like an invisible, deep crack that no one sees but that we feel in every gesture, in every word. Knowing that Ender was with someone else took the floor from under my feet. But what destroyed me the most was that he kept looking me in the eyes and telling me that he loved me. How can someone lie so calmly, so naturally? In the early days, I walked around the house like a ghost. My steps were light, silent, and my voice barely came out. I answered what he needed, smiled when he said something funny, and even allowed myself a kiss on the cheek before going to sleep. But inside, I bled in silence. I slept little and ate even less. Sometimes I found myself staring at the ceiling, trying to understand exactly when he decided I was no longer enough. It's not easy to admit that you're no longer someone's choice, especially when that someone promised you the world, holding your hand at an altar, with eyes filled with tears of love. I thought about confronting him many times, but I always backed out at the last second. I was afraid of what he would say, afraid of hearing that he was in love with her, afraid that he wouldn't apologize, afraid that, instead of repenting, he would just confirm everything with that coldness that many men use when they think they've already won. So I kept quiet, because silence sometimes is a shield, a place where pain lives, but also where we feel at least a little safe. And so I lived. I became an observer of my own life. I analyzed everything, the schedules, the excuses, the different perfumes, the deleted messages. He thought he was smart, but I saw everything. Even his eyes changed. They were more alive, as if he were living a late adolescence. That hurt more than anything. I started noticing the details. The new shirt he wore only when he went out for work, the way he took care of his beard, the silly smile he gave while he was on his phone, the way he was in a hurry to hang up when I approached. It was like being trapped in a movie I didn't want to be in but couldn't stop watching. And yet, I stayed there, making dinner, doing laundry, waiting for him to come home. Why? Because part of me still loved him, and the other part, still, loved himself too little to leave. It was at this stage that I began to ask myself, what if I reversed the logic? What if, instead of confronting him, I returned everything differently, not with hate, not with fights, but with a gesture so unexpected that it made him stop, reflect, and perhaps feel. The idea for the party didn't come to me overnight. It came to me like a whisper. One night when he got home late and I pretended to be asleep, he lay down next to me, sighed deeply, and I saw a mixture of guilt and relief on his face, as if on the one hand he regretted it, but on the other he felt free. That night, I decided, if he wanted to live another life, I would let him see what he was about to lose. I began preparations in secret, nothing big, nothing exaggerated, an intimate party, just for the two of us. A dinner, candles, music, but everything is very well thought out. I wanted to recreate the night he proposed to me. The same glasses, the same plate, even the same dress which I had to adjust, because time changes our bodies. I spent days reliving memories as I cooked, picked flowers, rehearsed words I might never say. During this time, I watched him even more, and every gesture hurt me, but it also gave me strength. I needed to understand why he did what he did, if he still loved me, if it was worth fighting or just letting go. On the day of the party, he left early as usual. He gave me a quick kiss on the forehead and said he had a meeting until later. I just smiled and wished him luck. As soon as he left, I started transforming our home. I lit candles, scattered petals, cooked with a care I hadn't given myself in a long time. I chose a playlist with songs that were ours, that reminded us of who we were, where we started. I put on the dress. I applied my makeup slowly, calmly. Each brush stroke was a ritual of reconnecting with myself. When I looked in the mirror, I saw myself as beautiful, strong. Even with my heart broken, I saw myself as whole again. At PM, he still hadn't arrived. I sent a simple message. I have a surprise for you today. Let me know when you're on your way. He only replied half an hour later. Oops. Now I'm curious. I'm leaving now. At 9 p.m. he walked into the house. He had that surprised but suspicious look. He looked around, saw the decorations, the dinner on the table. When he saw the dress, he was speechless. What is all this? He asked, smiling, but with that tension in the air. A night for us to remember who we were, I replied, offering the glass. He came over, we toasted, we sat down, and we began to eat. During the entire meal, I said nothing about Mel, nothing about the messages, the outings, the lies. I was light, gentle, even affectionate, and he seemed disconcerted as if he were expecting a trap. But there was no trap. There was only truth in my silence. When we were done, I put on the music. I reached out. Dance with me? He hesitated, but he accepted. And it was while she was dancing, with her head resting on his shoulder, that the tears began to fall. Silently, hot, he felt it. He pushed me away a little and asked what it was. I looked into his eyes and said, you know what it was. It was the first time I saw him speechless. He took a while to answer. Maybe he didn't know what to say. Maybe he was just trying to find the safest version of the truth. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, the fear, and maybe, deep down, even a trace of shame. But the silence between us said a lot. I didn't need any more proof, screenshots or witnesses. I already knew, and he knew that I knew. Hope, he began, but stopped halfway. Just my name. No excuse, no denial, no justification. Just my name, loaded with everything he still didn't have the courage to admit. We continued looking at each other for a few seconds, and in that space between the look and the speech, I realized that that dance had been our farewell. Even if he didn't know it yet, even though I didn't know what I would do the next day, the hope I had placed in that night was fading with every blink, every hesitation, every uncomfortable silence. How long has it been? I asked, my voice calm. It didn't even sound like mine. He lowered his eyes. He answered almost in a whisper. About 2 months. 2 months. The time I spent being suspicious, crying alone in the shower, pretending it was PMS when my mood dropped for no reason. 2 months he made her dinners and ate mine with the same mouth. 2 months he lived 2 lives and I survived on half of one. Was it just physical? I asked, even though I knew that question was an emotional trap. We always want to know if there was love, as if that would change the pain, as if cheating with the body was less than cheating with the heart. I don't know anymore, Hope, he said, running his hand over his face, visibly nervous. I lost myself. We've grown so far apart. I didn't want it to be like this. That was the cruelest part. He still wanted me to understand, to see my share of the blame, to help justify what he did. But I was no longer there to support a mistake. I was there to be the woman he lost. Do you still love her? I don't know. She makes me laugh. She makes me feel light. But with you it's different. You're my home. I smiled, a dry, ironic smile. Then why did you leave her? He didn't answer. He just looked away. The party ended there. What was supposed to be a new beginning turned into an ending. There was no fight. There was no screaming. There was only a clean, cold, definitive pain. He went to the bedroom, and I stayed in the living room with the smell of the candles still burning, with the remains of dinner on the table, with my makeup smeared and my dress stuck to my body from the mixture of sweat and sadness. That night, I understood that forgiving does not mean accepting. In the following days, he tried to get closer. He said he wanted to talk more, that he owed me explanations. I listened to everything in silence, but inside me a new woman was being born. One who didn't want any more crumbs. One that got tired of explaining itself for being intense, for demanding presence, for demanding respect. I started going out more, walking with your head held high, wearing clothes that I previously thought were too much. I started looking at myself in the mirror as if I were looking for the woman who once lost herself trying to be what someone else wanted. And I found her. It was there all along. It was just covered by layers of pain, fear, and adjustment. But the hardest part came later, when he called me to talk. Seriously, with swollen eyes, a choked voice. He asked me to sit on the couch with him, and he told me, for the first time, everything I needed to hear and everything I didn't want to hear. I broke up with Mel. Her name came out of his mouth naturally, as if it were any other person. But for me, it was the woman who occupied the space where I should have been. Not because I didn't like her, he continued, but because I understood that what I did to you was unforgivable. And I'm not man enough to maintain a relationship that started the way it did. I remained silent. I just listened. Inside, every word was like a slowly spinning knife. I regret it, Hope, but I don't expect you to believe it. I just want you to know. And if you ever want to try, I'll be here. The worst thing about regret is that it usually comes too late, when we have already said goodbye inside. When hope has already died without fanfare. You may be here, Ander, I said, my voice firm, but I'm not here anymore. And I'm not going back to a place where I lost myself. He cried. For the first time, I saw sincere repentance, but it wasn't enough, because it's not about how much someone regrets. It's about how much we learn to love ourselves enough to not accept less than we deserve. That night, I slept alone on the couch, for the first time, in peace. The next day, I made my coffee while listening to my favorite song. I picked up my phone and blocked Mel's number, not because I hated her, but because she didn't owe me any loyalty. He did, and it was his mistake. But I didn't want to feed on hate anymore, or anger. I wanted to live, lightly. A week later, I arranged to go out with a friend I hadn't seen in a while. I put on a floral dress, let my hair down, and walked out the door with a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. Ander looked at me with surprise, and perhaps even admiration. But it was too late. He lost the right time. And time, it doesn't come back. The next morning, as I drank my coffee with a strange silence hanging over the house, I felt Ander watching me, not with that look he had at the beginning of our relationship, when there was admiration, desire, and curiosity. It was the look of someone who had lost what he took for granted, a bitter look, mixed with regret and helplessness. I didn't say anything. I just got up from the table, calmly washed my cup, and went for a walk. I needed to breathe. The air outside felt lighter, as if his guilt had left with me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I didn't need to justify myself anymore. I was enough. I always had been. I was just with the wrong person to remind me of it. It was on that day that something inside me awakened. Not a thirst for revenge, but a desire to leave a mark. Not for him, for myself, because I needed to look back and know that I had turned my end into a worthy new beginning. And that was when, in an idea that many would call crazy, I decided to organize a party. Yes, a party, but not just any party. A party that would celebrate everything he lost, everything I got back. A party that would end the cycle with the same elegance with which I tried to save our relationship. It wouldn't be a party of forgiveness, nor a celebration of betrayal. It would be a farewell, a goodbye dressed in lightness, irony, and truth. I spent the week organizing everything in silence. I sent a message to my closest friends. Some were shocked. Others tried to convince me not to do it. They said it was exposure, that I could regret it, that it was feeding the pain. But they didn't understand that this was my liberation ritual, my way of ending a cycle that I was held hostage to for too long. It will be on the 10th at 8 p.m. At our house. I wrote on the digital invitation, dress code, white, theme, new beginnings. Ender saw the movement and tried to understand. He asked, with some caution, what it was. He said he didn't want to become a joke, that he was already trying to redeem himself. It's not about you, Ender, I said, looking into his eyes. It's about me, and about everything I had to swallow in silence while you had fun with someone else. He fell silent. For the first time, he understood that he had lost control of the narrative. The day of the party arrived. The house was beautiful. White flowers, lights hanging in the garden, a light playlist playing in the background. I wore a long white dress with a delicate slit and a discreet neckline. My hair was loose. I wore soft makeup, and there was a sparkle in my eyes that I no longer recognized. It was as if I had reconnected with a version of myself that was buried under sorrow. The guests began to arrive. Many didn't know what to expect. Others thought it was a reconciliation. Some even whispered that I had lost my mind. But when I went up on a small improvised stage and asked for silence, the truth prevailed in the room. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I prepared this party with great care, but not to celebrate a couple, but a woman. Myself, I took a deep breath, feeling a lump in my throat, but I continued. For months I was betrayed, ignored, belittled. I was put aside by someone who claimed to love me. And during all that time, I kept quiet. I tried to understand. I tried to fix it. I even tried to forget. But today, I don't try anymore. I saw Ender at the bottom of the garden, standing still, static, not knowing whether to leave or listen to the end. And so I continued. This party is my final destination. This is where I leave behind the woman who waited, who begged for crumbs, who lost herself trying to keep a relationship alive on her own. I will no longer carry the weight of a mistake I didn't make. And I want to toast with you my decision to choose myself. Because loving someone else is beautiful, but loving yourself is essential. Timid applause began, until it turned into sincere, loud applause, with some teary eyes among the guests. I stepped down from the stage feeling my heart light, as if I had finally taken off the armor that was holding me to the ground. Ander approached later. He looked at me as if I were in front of a woman he had never met. I deserved it, he said quietly. Every word. You were brilliant, Hope. And yet you erased me, I replied firmly. But now, I shine alone. He tried to hug me. I backed away. No need, Ander. I forgave you, but I don't want to carry you with me anymore. We stood there for a few seconds, looking at each other. And I saw in his eyes a pain that would perhaps remain forever. The pain of someone who realizes too late that they have lost the love of their life. Not because they stopped loving, but because they learned to love themselves first. After that, he left, and I kept dancing, with friends, with strangers, with my own freedom. And when the music died down and the light started to dim, I sat there alone in the garden, looking up at the sky, feeling the night breeze like a hug from the universe. I didn't cry. I didn't blame myself. I just breathed. And for the first time, I breathed without pain. In the days that followed the party, the house seemed strangely silent. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of relief. As if the walls had witnessed my liberation and now granted me some peace. Ender left that same night. He didn't take much. He said he needed some time to reflect, to think, to understand what he had done. I didn't stop him. I just watched. With the same look he used to give me when I tried to understand his disappearances. Irony of fate. On the outside, I seemed at peace. But on the inside, my heart was still a battlefield. There were days when I felt victorious, strong, capable. There were others when his absence echoed like a hole inside my chest, not because I missed what he was, but because of everything I had believed we would be. And in this back and forth of feelings, I started to write. Writing healed me. It made me understand the mess. It made me remember. It made me cry too. But tears that cleaned, not that sank. It was then that, on one of those gray days, I received a message from Camila. Yes, herself. The woman who, for months, shared my husband with me without any remorse. The woman who knew of my existence and even so, chose to be the other. The message was short. Hi, Hope. I know I'm the last person in the world you want to hear from, but I really need to talk to you. Please give me this chance. I was paralyzed. What did she want? More pain? More humiliation? Or was it just another blow to inflate her own ego? But something, deep down, told me that I needed to listen. Not for her, for me. Maybe understanding better what had happened would help me close that wound once and for all. I took a deep breath and replied, okay, tomorrow, 5 p.m. At the cafe on the corner of 3rd Avenue. She arrived punctually. She looked different. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes, a loose blouse and a downcast gaze. Nothing about that woman resembled the seductive figure I had imagined. She sat down slowly, ordered a coffee and was silent for a few seconds. Then she began to speak. Hope, I know that nothing I say here will erase what happened, but I couldn't bear to carry this alone anymore. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. When I met Ander, he told me he was separated, that you were in different houses, that you had already broken up, but that he hadn't told his family yet because of the children. He painted you as a bitter, controlling woman who used marriage as an emotional prison. I believed him, and that's what hurts me the most. She was shaking a little as she held the cup. At first, I thought he needed a new love. That I was that. But over time, I realized that he used his past with you as an excuse for everything. Every time he disappeared, every time he avoided me, he said it was because of the mess with you. But I started to understand that he did to you exactly what he was doing to me. My stomach turned. It was like hearing a mirror of my pain being reflected in another woman. One day, I went after him, and I saw you two together at a family party. He said he didn't participate in these things anymore. And then, I knew I was being deceived, just like you, but I was already too involved. I felt like an idiot. You know what's worse? He made me angry with you. He told me that you controlled him, that you were cold, that you kept him from being happy. And I absorbed that. Today I see how much I was manipulated. I didn't say anything. I just listened. She cried, restrained, like someone carrying a burden that weighed too much. I broke up with him the day after the party you threw. He came looking for me, saying that you had set it up for revenge, that you were cruel, that you had embarrassed him. But I felt proud of you, because then I understood who he really was. A man who lies to survive emotionally, who creates versions of people so he never has to face his own mistakes. She took my hand. Forgive me, Hope. I don't want your friendship, nor your acceptance. I just wanted to look you in the eyes and tell you, you are much stronger than you think. And I was a fool, but now I know. She paid for the coffee, got up and left, and I stood there, my heart in pieces, but with a clarity I had never had before. Ander was not my mistake. He was a cruel master of self-deception, and I had been a naive student for far too long. That night, I got home and saw a letter from him on the porch, a handwritten letter. It was long, full of phrases like, I made a mistake, I was lost, you are everything I ever wanted, but I didn't know how to take care of you. He said he was in therapy, that he wanted to rebuild our relationship, that he would wait for me as long as it took. I calmly closed the letter and put it away, not because I intended to answer, but because I wanted to remember, one day, how much it cost me to learn to love myself more than I loved him. The next morning I went for a walk again, the same route, the same trees, but another look, because now I wasn't running away from the pain. I walked beside her, with my head held high as if I had finally understood that forgiving is not accepting, it's letting go. And I was finally letting go. After Ander's letter and the conversation with Camila, things changed inside me in a way I didn't expect. It was like something had snapped a tether that had kept me tied to an idea of love that never really existed. I spent so many years of my life trying to hold on to something that was always slipping through my fingers. And now, with it all out in the open, I could see the void I had always tried to fill. In the days that followed, he tried to get closer. He sent messages, flowers. He even came to the door, with the same look of regret that he had used on other occasions. Only now it was no longer the same scenario. It wasn't the same Hope anymore. I wasn't angry. I didn't want to fight, but I didn't want to start over either. I was tired of new beginnings that always started from the same point, me hurting myself to keep him whole. The third time he showed up at my house, I decided it was time to talk. I faced him on the porch, eye to eye. He tried to take my hand. I backed away. You deceived me so many times, Ander. Not only with Camila, but with this version of man that you tried to sell to me. The present husband, the exemplary father, the ideal companion. You built a lie so well told that even I believed it, but it's over. I'm tired of diminishing myself to fit into your world. He tried to argue. He said he was changing, that he was now in therapy, that he had realized how much he truly loved me, that he had made a mistake, yes, but that he deserved a chance, one last chance. You had all the chances in the world, Ander, but you chose not to use them. Now it's my choice, and I choose to move on without you. It was the first time I saw real tears in his eyes. Not of anger, not of fear of being discovered, but of loss. Only that loss was no longer mine. He walked out slowly, head down, and I walked into the house with a firm heart, still aching, but without regret. But the universe sometimes seems to test our certainties. A few weeks later, I received an unusual invitation. It was from Camila. She wanted to invite me to a different kind of meeting. A women's circle, as she called it. A space for listening, sharing, and healing. I hesitated. The idea of seeing her again, this time in an emotional space, made me feel a bit uncomfortable, but there was also a curiosity. Maybe, deep down, I needed that. I accepted. The circle took place in a simple house, with a garden in the background. There were about 10 women. They all had stories, some of losses, others of betrayals, others of new beginnings. And there, in that safe space, I realized how much pain unites us, how much of a mirror there is in the other's pain. When it was my turn to speak, I trembled. I didn't know if I could do it, but I spoke. I told him about the party, the betrayal, the letter, the wound, and the choice to continue. For myself, some cried, others hugged me afterwards. But what struck me most was the silence, a welcoming silence, from those who understand, from someone who has been there. Camila approached me at the end. She didn't say much. She just said, "You don't know how much your strength has impacted my life. Thank you for letting me hear it." I returned home with a light heart. For the first time in months, I slept without waking up in the middle of the night with a tight chest. It was as if I had finally buried that part of my history, not forgotten, but left behind. The months passed. Life was getting back on track. I signed up for a photography course, something I always wanted to do. I started going out more, meeting new people, looking at myself with more affection. And seeing myself alone didn't hurt anymore. On the contrary, it was liberating. One day, during one of those meetings during the course, I met Daniel, a simple man, with an easy laugh and an attentive gaze. We started talking slowly, without rushing, no promises, no expectations, just exchange. He learned about my story after a while, and he listened with respect, without judgment. He never tried to take up anyone's space, nor fix what was left in me. He was just there, and that, for me, was everything. I can't say that I trust like I used to, nor that I surrender without fear. But now, listen to my intuition more. I respect myself more. I don't chase after crumbs. I know who I am, and I know what I no longer accept. One day, while I was sorting through some old photos, I found a note I had written to myself years ago when I first suspected I was cheating on him. In it, I said, "If you ever find out the truth, I hope you have the courage not to betray yourself, too." I smiled, because I had. Life after the storm has a different flavor. It's not always sweet, but it's real. I was learning to live outside the minefield of lies, and I didn't feel victorious or vengeful. I felt light, and that, for me, was already a huge achievement. For a long time, my self-esteem was measured by Ander's presence. It was as if I was only worth something if he wanted me, if he said he loved me, if he was around. Today, I realize how unhealthy that was, and how I was extinguishing myself to keep a flame alive that only burned on one side. Daniel was not a fix for my pain. He was a calm mirror, showing me what was possible. Someone who didn't try to control me, judge me, or mold me. And this, while simple, was scary at times, because I was used to the tension, with the emotional ups and downs, with the tightrope. Being loved in peace was new and confusing, but little by little, I allowed it, without rushing, without demanding that I love him back in the same way. Daniel respected my silences, my walls, my pauses. He never tried to rush anything, and I knew, right then, that it was the first time someone had truly seen me whole. One of those quiet nights, while we were watching a movie, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Ander. "Can we talk? It's important." I was silent for a good few minutes. Daniel noticed. He didn't ask anything. He just paused the movie, looked at me and said, "You don't have to answer now. Or ever, if you don't want to." That gave me a strange kind of courage. I replied, "If it's in person, yes. But in a public place," he agreed. We met at a cafe in the city center. When I saw him arrive, I noticed how different he looked. Shorter hair, thinner, more serious expression. He sat down across from me with shaking hands. "I know you don't owe me anything, Hope, but I needed to tell you this. I need to get this off my chest, even if you never speak to me again after that." I nodded. I was open to listening. I destroyed a lot of things. And I'm not just talking about our marriage. I destroyed your confidence, your mental health, your joy, and the worst part, I did it thinking I had everything under control. I was addicted to feeling admired, desired, special. And at the same time, I felt small in the face of your light. You are always bigger than me. I took a deep breath. I didn't expect to hear that. After the letter, I went through a very difficult internal process. I started therapy like I told you, and I faced things from my childhood, from my father, from the way I learned that love was about exchange and manipulation. You don't have to know this at all, but I needed to talk. I messed up with you, and I understand if you never want to see me again. But really, Hope, thank you for loving me the way you did. I remained silent, not because I had nothing to say, but because I realized it didn't hurt anymore. It was strange, hearing all that from someone who has torn me apart so many times, and not feeling anger, nor sadness, nor a desire for revenge, only compassion. Ander, I loved you with everything I had, and that's why I went all the way. But now I'm rebuilding myself, and that doesn't involve you anymore. I hope you heal. I really do. But without me. He lowered his head, swallowed his tears, and simply said, "You deserve the world. Forgive me, even if it's just for you." We said goodbye with a quick hug, and I left with a calm heart. Not because he changed, but because I changed. In the following days, I returned to the women's circle. With each meeting, something in me settled. I started helping other women tell their stories. I became kind of a guide in that group. And, for the first time in my life, I felt useful in a profound way. The pain I experienced turned into a bridge, and what was once humiliation now became acceptance. Until one night, at the end of one of the circles, I received an unexpected invitation. One of the women, Clara, was organizing an event about starting over, a type of retreat with workshops, lectures, and experiences. And she wanted me to give a testimonial. You have a way of speaking that touches people. Your story could be the beginning of healing for many. Are you up for it? It took me 2 days to respond. I felt insecure, thinking that my story was trivial, and that no one would be interested. But then I remembered how many times listening to another woman saved me from myself. So I accepted. I prepared a text calmly. I went through my memories. I rewrote excerpts from Andrew's letter, Camila's messages, the dialogues with myself, everything in the form of a story. Truth meets poetry when pain becomes healing. On the day of the event, my voice trembled during the first few sentences, but I soon steadied myself. When I finished speaking, there was a thick silence in the room. Some women were crying, others closed their eyes. And there, in that moment, I understood. I had transformed my greatest wound into a tool for healing. Daniel was there, sitting in the back. He looked at me with a mixture of pride and care. In the end, he came to me and hugged me silently. I didn't need to say anything. Just being there said it all. After that day, I received invitations to tell my story in other places. I started writing. I created a profile on social media to talk about overcoming, starting over, abusive relationships, and female intuition. With each post, messages came, stories, venting, silent screams from women who, like me, just wanted to be seen. And I answered them, one by one, because I knew what it was like to feel invisible. And it was on this path, between words, listening, and empathy, that I realized that the party I had prepared back then, that one, for me and for him, was not about reconciliation. It was a farewell, a symbolic celebration to bury what never really existed, and welcome the woman who was being born there. Hope. Name that means hope. And that now made perfect sense. Life has gained a new texture. It wasn't about complete happiness, nor was it about being whole every day. It was more like learning to breathe differently. The air was no longer as heavy as before, and even on cloudy days, there was something in me that insisted on staying upright. Daniel and I continued at a calm pace. No promises, no rush. He showed me a kind of silent presence that didn't invade, just accompanied. And that, deep down, was all I needed. Someone who didn't demand complete cures from me, or a perfect version of myself. Someone who accepted my journey as it was, with pauses, stumbles, and silences. But the most impressive thing was realizing that I no longer wanted what I once begged for. Anders stayed behind calmly, without outbursts, without relapses. And perhaps that was the most beautiful victory. When he texted me again a few months later, saying he was moving out of town and starting over, I just wished he could find peace. No part of me wanted to continue the conversation. There was no more room. I had taken care of myself. The profile I created on social media began to grow. Women sent me long stories, sometimes so similar to what I experienced that I found myself reading them and crying alone. Others sent videos, audios, letters that they never had the courage to deliver to their husbands or lovers. And so, what was pain became a network, community, affection. I decided to give it all a name, Letters from Hope. Yes, the name he thought was silly became the banner of something much bigger than me. It was about hope, but also about strength. And every Wednesday, I would read one of those letters out loud. I would tell them calmly, without judgment, sometimes with my voice breaking. It was like lending my voice to so many who still couldn't say out loud what they felt. In one of these readings, I read a letter from a woman named Joanna. She said she had been married for 22 years to a controlling man who was cheating on her with her neighbor and made sure to let her know. Joanna said she didn't cry anymore. She just existed. And that I was afraid to leave because I didn't know who I was outside of that marriage anymore. I finished reading with a lump in my throat. The following week, I received another message from her. After hearing my own letter in your voice, I walked to the door, took a deep breath, and walked out. I'm at my sister's house now. Thank you. I stood there, staring at my cell phone screen for several minutes. That was it. It was all making sense. Sometime later, I received an invitation from an independent publisher. They wanted to turn the most memorable letters into a book. They asked me to write the preface, choose the titles, and tell my own story as an introduction. I cried with emotion. I felt like every version of me that had ever emotionally crawled for someone was being embraced. Daniel celebrated with me as if he were the winner. He took me out to dinner, bought me flowers, and said, "You are made to heal others. You just had to find out." I slept with my head on his chest that night, feeling like for the first time I was exactly where I was supposed to be. With the book in progress, I started getting invited to bigger events. I participated in a live chat. At the end, a 19-year-old girl approached me. She had tears in her eyes and said to me, "You saved me from repeating my mother's story." I was entering into a relationship identical to the one she lived in for 30 years. But hearing you say it woke me up. At that moment, I understood that the pain I had cursed so much was also the instrument that allowed me to touch other souls. Yes, I forgave Ander, but not in a romanticized way. I forgave to move on lightly, to no longer carry the weight of someone who drowned in their own mistakes. Forgiveness, in this case, was not reconciliation. It was liberation. Camila, the lover, also showed up once. She sent me a simple but unexpected message. "I know I have no right to write to you. I just want to say that it was all an illusion. Ender made me believe that you were the problem. Today I understand how much I was manipulated too. I hope you have found peace." I didn't answer, but I didn't feel angry either. Maybe that's what time does to us. It filters the pain until it turns to dust, and we learn not to sweep it under the rug, but to open the window and let the wind blow it away. The book launch took place in a small but crowded bookstore. Women, men, mothers with teenage daughters, therapists, psychologists, a diverse, attentive, emotional audience. When I went up on stage to speak, I felt my hands sweating, but not from fear, from respect, for everything I've been through, for everything they've been through. Said into the microphone, this story began with a betrayal, but it didn't end in a tragic ending. It ended, or rather, it began again. When I chose to come back to myself. Betrayal hurts, it corrodes, but it also reveals. It reveals where we are stepping. It reveals what we accept in the name of an idea of love. It reveals what we need to let go of, and who we need to be. Break. If you are in this phase of revelation, hold on tight. It will hurt, it will, but afterwards comes a kind of peace that only those who go through it know. And this peace is yours by right. Fight for it. Applause, tears, shy smiles. As I was leaving, a lady hugged me tightly. She must have been about 70 years old, and she said to me, "I've waited my whole life to hear someone say that. I was cheated on at 40, and only now, after 70, I was able to say that it wasn't my fault. Thank you." I stood there still, with her hugging me, in silence, with a cleansed soul. Months later, I published a second book, this time, with stories of new beginnings, stories of women who rebuilt their lives after betrayal, abandonment, and abuse. Each chapter was a seed planted in land that was once devastated. And it all started with that party. The party I prepared for myself and for him. Today I understand that that party was not meant to be rekindled. It was meant to end. It was my emotional farewell to a cycle, my intimate ritual of liberation. The day I put on my best dress, lit candles, played music, made food. It wasn't to celebrate a return. It was to give myself what I always denied, value. Because the truth is that betrayal only had so much space because I betrayed myself. First, I betrayed myself every time I accepted crumbs, that I kept quiet when it hurt, that I swallowed tears to keep up appearances, that I stayed when I should have gone. But it's never too late. And I went entirely. I went for myself. And that's what I wish for you who have come this far, that you have the courage to go, not always away, but towards yourself. Because nothing is more revolutionary than a woman who decides to love herself after being broken up with. If this story made sense to you, comment below with "That's all," a symbol of a new beginning, and share it with someone who still thinks that love means accepting everything, that forgiving means coming back, that making mistakes is normal. It's not. Knowingly hurting someone will never be normal. And if you want to continue hearing real, impactful, and transformative stories, subscribe to the channel. Your presence here gives me the strength to continue. See you in the next story. And never forget, every wound heals better when it finds shelter.